I felt so bad when I had to keep putting one of my boys in timeout. The look on his face, it really tugged my heart and it made me feel so guilty. It's much easier to let things slide, at least in the now. But it's not about right now. The point is to train our kids in how to think and what to do, to equip them in their decision-making skills, so when they're teenagers and grown-ups, they know how to approach different situations.
Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Children are born full of potential and capabilities. We as parents are the catalysts. Our job is to ignite and direct, which basically means training up our children so they can reach their full potential. An arrow needs a bow to fulfill its purpose, and a bullet needs a gun. A guided missile needs a guide.
There's a short-term and a long-term kind of love that we have for our children. The short-term love is easier and comes much more naturally. It's easy to make them feel loved. It's a bit tougher to love them intelligently for the future, because that always involves training. It involves discipline from us, and we have to go out of our way to do it. And it can come with a bit of irritation and upheaval, especially when you have more than one child who all have individual needs and need their individual attention. But training our kids is actually not just about focusing on them, but also about how we behave as parents.
Train them like you are preparing them for the war of life, and not just a single battle. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Spread the training over time. Don't try to cover too much ground too quickly, because repetition breeds mastery. It's more effective to focus on 5 principles than 20 principles that could so easily be forgotten. When it comes to learning, practical examples trump theoretical explanation. But 10 minutes of theory per day is more productive than cramming in 70 minutes of theory once on a weekly basis. We aim to put our children in the right target direction for success, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. Remember to be the fun dad too. All work and no play makes Jack a dull dad. Give them fun moments of memories.
The best way to learn to drive is to be trained by a qualified driving instructor at the beginning, so that we can avoid learning bad habits. They may not get it straight away, but through repetition, through training, reminded over and over again, they will get it right in the future. One doesn't want to overcorrect. As mothers, some of us can. We need to give them a little space, but at the same time have very clear boundaries.
There is a verse of scripture that has attracted much debate in regard to how children are raised. Proverbs 13:24. He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. Is it telling parents to use the rod, as some older generation Christians argue, or is the emphasis on correction? This is a very important scripture to understand, and I will dissect it shortly. But firstly, it's important to appreciate that the book of Proverbs is a skillfully constructed book of wisdom, and there is one important ingredient to acquiring wisdom: experience. Wisdom can either be acquired through direct experience or gained indirectly through someone else's experience.
The truth is, as parents, we tend to focus too much on what our kids are like as children, instead of what they will become like as adults. Often we try to mold them into individuals that we ourselves find easier to live with, rather than individuals that will grow up reaching their full and unique potentials. We as grown-ups must learn to accept and live with some of the quirkinesses in our children's behavior, even when it feels disruptive to our lives. It might sometimes be challenging, but those personality quirks might be the flip side of the coin, and to tamper with them might be tampering with the unique strength they need in the future. As parents and carers, we have the awesome responsibility to have insight into our children's lives, so that we can correct where needed and nurture where needed. They need both.
Through the ages, many Christians have interpreted the rod in Proverbs 13:24 to mean an actual literal rod. And so, unfortunately, many have supported the arguments for spanking and even beating up children. The Bible is a hyperlinked book. You can always find a confirmation in the Bible for every word or statement said in the Bible. Apostle Peter said in 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 20, "No scripture requires your own private interpretations. A confirmed truth always leaves a trail. There is never a need to use your own imagination. The Bible always confirms the Bible. With that in mind, Proverbs 22 verse 15 tells us what kind of rod to use. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him. The rod of correction, the subject here is the rod, and the object is correction. So the rod of correction relates to correction and not a physical rod.
I remember hearing a story of a young boy who was very loud and over-the-top verbal as a young child. But his father didn't correct it, but felt this was important for his future. As he grew older, but still in his adolescence, he became a motivational speaker and counselor, showing great potential in these areas. And his freedom to express himself growing up had been a vital part in his training.
Another confirmation of this can be found in Psalms 23. You comfort me with your rod and your staff. Correction is used as a method to bring comfort. God is not our physical shepherd, and we are not his physical sheep. There is no physical rod, but we understand through the comparison with the relationship between a shepherd and his sheep that God uses correction as a way to guide us and keep us from danger.
Ouch.
And we really must remember to build up our children emotionally as well. The emotional strength of a child is important these days because the world has become cold. Let's make sure they aren't easy targets, not as children and not as adults. King David said, "Like arrows are in the hands of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth." Today we could say, like bullets in the hands of a sniper, so are the children of one's youth. Children carry a lot of potential, but need guidance. They need direction. They need training. Practical routine and consistency is what guides them. In Psalm 23:4, King David famously said, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." What a gift to leave with our children. A rod and a staff that comforts them through life. And what is the rod and the staff? It's training and wisdom.
Dads, we must remember to keep telling our kids we love them and articulate approval. Don't just nod your head or smile when they succeed in little things. Express your approval. Words matter. Few things make a child feel more confident as they navigate through life than hearing, "I love you. Well done. I am so proud of you." The father said of his son publicly at his baptism before he embarked on his journey, before his son had achieved what he set out to do. "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased."
Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Why does it say to train? Why not to teach? It's a lot more straightforward to instruct and tell someone how to behave without necessarily walking them through it. To send them to Sunday school to be taught, or depend on teachers, or even just relying on a good old explanation. But Proverbs says to train. To train someone requires real life experiences, patience, and devotion. Imagine this scenario. 2 teenagers. One has been given a practical crash course of how to drive a car for 1 week, and the other has been taught theoretically to drive a car for 6 months. Now, if you find yourself in an emergency, which child would you feel comfortable to hand over your keys to? 6 months of being taught theory doesn't prepare you for the roads.
Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, "And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, and let your no's come with an explanation." That way, our children are much more likely to respect boundaries in the future because they understand why. There's a very important detail I need to highlight and cover. Romans 13 verse 1. "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities." Submit your soul simply means mentally adjust yourself to the laws of the nation. It doesn't ask Christians to submit our spirits. God's eternal law, love your neighbor as yourself, is not subject to negotiation. Let's get one thing clear. We don't own our kids. Kids have rights and protections under the state law. So if we refuse to take them to school, for instance, we will face a charge of abuse. If we abuse them, social services will step in. The reason I raise this up is because several Christians around the world have lost children, sadly because they refused to allow medication for their kids and instead insisted on prayer alone. This is not Bible. It is religious and has got nothing to do with God. Faith without works is dead. All the people Jesus cured had already tried to be cured through the medical authorities. The woman with the issue of blood, for example, and sometimes when Jesus even cured the lepers, he asked them to go and register themselves with the authorities. Jesus definitely supported the medical authorities. He was not in disagreement with them.
Practical training requires focused engagement. You can be with your children all day and still not apply any focused training. Even if it's just 30 minutes of focused training a day, it will make a huge difference in a child's life over the course of just 1 year. So this is really to encourage us parents that we hold an important key in our hands and that we truly are the catalysts of the future of our children. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next message.